This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
But anyways, let's move on to the Timberwolves. If you're just joining us on YouTube, it's a different segment. If you're just joining us on YouTube, thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. But if you are joining us, Jimmy Butler and I guess it's now Justin Patton were traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves for Zach LaVine, Chris Dunn, and the 7th overall pick, which turned into Lauri Markkanen. And we already talked about this on the Bulls topic, but the Timberwolves are the clear winner in our minds. If you do want to see the reasons why, go check out the end of that segment. But Dave, let's get into it. And the lineup now that the Timberwolves, the young Timberwolves, the spooky Timberwolves on the on r/NBA on Reddit are called. You look at this team right now, led by Ricky Rubio at the point guard. You look at the two, either Butler or Wiggins, who they ultimately put there. Probably Wiggins because Butler will have more favorable matchups, at least defensively, regarding the tougher guys defensively at the 3. But I think that probably more on a matchup basis who they're playing. Yeah. But Wiggins or Butler at the 2, Butler or Wiggins at the 3. I would say Cat now at the 4, and then Patton at the 5. Depends on who they bring in, both in free agency. But you at least have the 4 of Rondo, Butler, Wiggins, and Cat. Is this the scariest, youngest lineup in the NBA, or would you still go with Philly?
Oh, I love Philly, but this team is now just jumped way ahead. Their timeline went from, hey, we've got 3 guys in back-to-back-to-back drafts. We're looking really good. I like the way they're going. Obviously, they don't play defense, but they brought in a defensive guru in Thibodeau. We didn't see a ton of growth their first year, but I was really hoping that year 2 in the system, we're going to see some turnaround, very similar to how the Bulls were affected by Thibodeau when he first came to them. Honestly, though, the jump from having Zach LaVine and a scrub, Chris Dunn, I'm just going to say it. I'm just angry now. You didn't
say that on the Bulls one.
I'm just angry now, Sean.
So obviously you're upgrading
the jump from them to Jimmy Butler, who is a playoff top 15 player. A top 15 player with playoff experience, who every year has gotten better. Like, this is amazing for them. They are instantly playoff worthy, and they, in my mind, it's one of the scariest teams. The biggest question then becomes, does the roster fill out and allow them to play defense to compete? Because they had no problem outscoring people. Yeah. But when they got in shootouts, it get a little scary.
And that's the thing that you bring in Jimmy Butler, one of the best two-way players in the NBA. I mean, obviously
just
up there
behind like LeBron and Kawhi, pretty much.
Yeah, LeBron, Kawhi, Paul George too. Yeah, Paul George is definitely up there, but definitely top 5 player, at least two-way wise. I mean, Jimmy Butler, fantastic player, going to add defense, going to add veteran mentality. And he's also pairing him with Tibbs, who he's comfortable with. He's comfortable in the system, so it's not like it's going to be a huge change for him. It's not like he's going to be a huge culture change for him at all in Minnesota. Yeah, exactly.
His knee's got a break for a whole year.
He didn't have to be outworked by Tibbs.
Yeah.
2 years for getting a break from Tibbs. But still, it's not going to be a culture shock. It's not going to be anything different here.
No, I think this
Minnesota.
is awesome for him. I think this is exactly what Butler needs, because obviously Chicago is a franchise that we've screwed him. There's numerous articles out there about how we were blackballing him into like, oh, if you don't sign your extension, we're going to play Tony Snell over you. We're just going to cut your minutes and nobody will pay you money. So like, honestly, he wasn't a fit for the organization. Chicago loved him, but it doesn't matter when you don't have the support. Yeah, but it doesn't matter when Garpax are telling you that we don't want you here over and over, the constant trade rumors. So I'm happy for him for moving along and being the fit on this team is awesome, because Cat is one of the most dynamic young players. Like everybody was like
the most dynamic player.
Everyone was so on Anthony Davis for years about he's going to be the next big thing. Like there's no one with his kind of size, shot, athleticism, everything. And then all of a sudden it's been like injury, like these little naggy things that knock him out, and he's never been able to turn it up. And Cat comes in looking like a phenom right off the bat.
So fluid.
Yep.
It's something that's just absolutely scary. And you're pairing that with Wiggins, who's a fantastic slasher, a fantastic scorer. And one thing that at least now you look at least the scoring, it's probably an improvement, if anything, over Zach LaVine.
LaVine was efficient. That's the problem. Like,
he was.
LaVine gave you outside shooting, and it was efficient. Jimmy's pretty good from the mid-range. He's a decent three-point shooter. I wouldn't even say good.
But then again, maybe if you're taking less pressure off of Wiggins to be a go-to scorer, or you're taking less pressure to be off Butler to be a go-to scorer, and you have these two guys that can go back and forth on, because Jimmy hasn't had a guy like this to go off of. I mean, D-Wade's a fantastic scorer, but he wasn't as good as Wiggins.
And they played similar styles, too. That's the problem. And Wiggins and Jimmy do have some overlap, but I think that there are clear roles for each of these guys in this team, and it's very, very fun to think about the combinations and how they're going to play together. And I mean, honestly, like I'm already penciling them in for like 8th seed. Like that's how confident I am. Jimmy Butler takes his team from a number 7 lottery pick to the 8th seed in the playoffs in my mind. It's just like that.
And well, that's what something you also look
at.
And center.
And a center being picked up.
And
in
Justin Patton, very weak defensively, doesn't have a lot of size, but looks
so
fluid
good
as
on
hell.
offense.
Yeah, looks fluid as hell on offense. So the one thing I do want to bring up, though, and you keep talking about playoffs.
Yeah, I'm pushing it.
What I want to, well, I don't disagree with you. It's just more of, I'm trying to back it up, and you look at Jimmy Butler, what he did for the Bulls.
Sure.
And how Jimmy Butler alone elevated his teammates on the Bulls, elevated that team to a playoff team. I mean, last year, the prior year, they were close to the playoffs. Obviously, had a terrible stretch at the end and weren't able to make it. And then this past year, obviously helping them get to the playoffs, obviously with the help of Rondo and D Wade.
Yep.
But still, that was mainly because of Butler. And now you're adding 2 of the best youngest players in the league to him. I don't see how this doesn't work at all. And I think the only question is, how high is the ceiling now for Minnesota? Because it's going to take them a couple years to get to the top level of the Western Conference.
I'm not saying they're going to compete right now at the Warriors. No, this is a team that I have my eye out for. Jimmy Butler is going to be 28 next year, or this next basketball season. So, honestly, for a guy who put up 24, 6.5, 5.5, and 2 steals, like, all around amazing talent. But again, there's a lot to teach these young kids, like you said. And I mentioned this during our live stream talking about the younger teams in the league. Like, I like a lot of them. But again, you're going to have a lot of good success early. And then it's the fact that late in the season, you're going to probably have trouble closing out games. And I know that's something Minnesota struggled with last year. Having someone like Butler on that team, I think immediately corrects that problem. I'm completely confident in him, his decision-making. He's comfortable with the ball in the hands, out of his hands. So I think all around, the biggest question for me now lies on that one spot, and Ricky Rubio and Tyus Jones, and seeing.
Well, I think it's Ricky's.
Well, it's
for
Ricky's
sure.
to rule, Ricky's to lose.
Yeah.
I think Tyus Jones has been a project they've been working on for a couple years. So the question is, if they're going to go out and get another point guard in free agency here because they don't believe in him or they don't think he is close enough to close that gap after watching what the Chris Dunn experiment was.
Yeah.
So that's my question: is Ricky Rubio the right one to run this team?
Well, that's one thing. Obviously, they were shopping him during the draft, prior to the draft.
Yeah, I'd say we've heard him for the last year. He's been shopped.
It's really the fit of Ricky Rubio now on this team because
Jimmy Butler changes it. I mean, he's just outright say it.
He's a guy that's not going to be able to score. He's not an efficient scorer. He's not a deadly shooter. He's a one-man show on offense when it comes to penetrating and dishing out, which is going to help Jimmy's ability to shoot from the outside, drive in. It's going to help Wiggins' ability to shoot and drive in. It's going to take more attention away from Wiggins, especially when Levine was out. It's going to take more attention away from Wiggins, not Liggins. Isn't that some DeAndre Liggins? No, Wiggins. It's going to take more pressure off those two, and then Cat obviously in the middle. They can dump it inside. So I think Rubio fits with this team. He's decent defensively.
It's like a poor man's.
But I think Rubio might be fit best as a backup, but I don't think Rubio wants to play backup at all. So I think ultimately they have to find a guy that's going to fit with this team. And I think a guy like that might be a guy that's a 3-and-D point guard. A guy that doesn't really need to be a facilitator, because Jimmy, I mean, he's not a facilitator in the means, but when you have
5.5 assists, he's not terrible.
But when you have guys like Wiggins with Butler and Cat, that ball's going to flow.
You have to give him touches, and that's the thing. You got to keep guys like Cat involved. You got to keep Wiggins involved, and that's one of the biggest things that Rubio, give him the credit, is he was very good at continually gain everyone involved in that offense. Honestly, though, it's just that question of, you're right, without that 3 threat, like, it's very hard to take him legitimately as a threat on offense, so teams can end up slacking off and, predicting that, he's going to pass out when he dishes, he's not going to drive for the hole, he's not going to pull up and take a jumper. So it's a balance. I get it. I just don't know if I love his fit for the future of this team as much as I love everybody else. Like, that's the thing. It's like, I like their 5, I like their 4, I like their 3, I like their 2. I think one is the area to improve.
And looking at all of this, taking kind of taking it all in, when looking at what the Timberwolves can go for, and not specific players if you don't feel comfortable throwing out if you don't have any in mind,
sure.
But what player types should they be looking for to pair with Jimmy Butler, to pair with Ricky Rubio, to pair with Andrew Wiggins, to pair with Karl Anthony Towns, to pair with Justin Patton? Is there any sort of player that they should be looking after? Is it a veteran? Is it a younger guy to pair with this younger team? Should they be looking at some specific player type, 3-and-D, defensive only, a playmaker? What are your thoughts?
No, I think that's fair. I think we were talking about a little bit with the 3-and-D player. I think that's like the best bet you could get to fit them, I think, as a 3-and-D player. And I'm going to sound stupid because it was like, well, Lonzo Ball probably would have been a pretty solid fit there. Obviously, I know he wasn't available. It's just one of those things like, you get someone who is a very comfortable distributor and then someone who can play defense. Free agency, though, or actually trading, is Pat Bev. He's the guy who I think, because the Rockets have been rumored to trying to move him. I don't know what assets the Timberwolves are willing to move at this point, though, to get him. But I think someone like Pat Bev would be a good fit for you coming off the bench if you were at all concerned with Ricky Rubio.
Well, a name I want to throw out there, and a couple names actually, and you're going to see the link between these two guys.
Sure.
We mentioned it a little bit on the live stream. Derrick Rose.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it, but yeah.
But then also the other guy is Taj Gibson. Taj Gibson going to be a free agent. Do you think Taj would fit at all off this bench?
Yeah, no, I could see that. Like,
do you think that Taj might actually be a better fit right now in that starting lineup over Justin Patton? Let Justin Patton develop on the ground on the bench.
Yeah, because you let Patton go
5.
up against the second unit guys, and he can dominate them offensively as a rookie. I think that he has the potential to do that. So if you bring Todd, oh my God, it's like the dream. It's you're matching up two teams that, what's not to love. It's you get Jimmy Butler and Taj Gibson. Both of them are very good veterans and have playoff experience, and Taj will give you everything. As OKC, they had him for 2 months. They all love him. It's just he's an awesome role player for your team, and him at the 4 with Cat at the 5. I think that'd be great. I think that rounds out the roster really nicely. The Derrick Rose one, I have my concerns because Jimmy and Derrick, did not get along very well in Chicago.
No, they didn't.
The question is, was that a matter of the situation in Chicago with the ownership and the direction of the team?
Also, D Rose's ego being the guy in Chicago.
Or that. Because I don't know, has D Rose taken a step back now that the New York experiment is over? After his injured
again,
is he gonna realize that, hey, maybe I can't play like I have no limits because I've already jacked up my knee multiple times.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But I think regardless of moves, unless they go out and just fill the team with scrubs and fill the team with former Orlando Magic guys, I think that this team has a lot of potential this year to make the playoffs. I think beyond this year for sure. I mean, you mentioned Jimmy Butler, 27 years old. He's got at least 5 years in his prime. And you also look at the control. He's got 2 years on the Timberwolves for sure. Then he's got a player option, which most likely is going to decline because he's making like 19 mil, which isn't going to happen. He's going to decline.
Yeah, he's going to go get his 30 mil.
So that's the one thing where there's a 2-year window for sure. You have Karl Anthony Towns, Andrew Wiggins, and Jimmy Butler on a team, and I think that's going to be a team that can at least at the most hit the 4 seed. For sure. Like I'm saying not this year, but next year.
Yeah.
I'm thinking next year with a pick.
They are well set for the future, and I think that this trade was amazing for them. I know Zach LaVine, again, amazing shooter for you guys, very efficient, and as your third option on offense was scoring 19 points per game. So I don't have any concerns about sharing the ball in that city anymore. It's just a matter of moving away from him, what you're getting in Jimmy is going to be different. And the way they're going to have to play is going to be different, but being able to get Jimmy plus an asset like Justin Patton, you're getting so much value.
You're getting an upgrade defensively too, and that's the biggest thing that they need help at. And at least 3-point wise, it's not going to take a massive dip. I mean, Jimmy's a competent 3-point shooter. He's not going to kill you, but he's a competent 3-point shooter. And if he goes off, we've seen nights where Jimmy goes off for 50 and he puts up 7 of 11 from 3, and you're like, where the hell is this Jimmy Butler every single night? So you look at the Timberwolves. They are one of the scariest teams, if not the scariest team in the NBA, Spooky. I'd say right now. 76ers obviously up there, but that's one thing that I do want to mention, and that's how I think we should end it, is the fact that you might be turned off by the Warriors and Cavs, the back-to-back finals that has happened, probably probably 4 straight finals
potentially
by the look of it. However, look at the youth that has now entered the NBA, and look how none of that youth is on both of those teams. Yes, LeBron James is there. Yes, Steph Curry's there. Yes, Kevin Durant's there. Yes, Klay Thompson is there. But in 5, 6, 7 years, it's going to be an NBA run by the Lakers, by the Philadelphia 76ers, by the Minnesota Timberwolves, by the Sacramento Kings. That feels weird saying.
The Suns, the Phoenix Suns,
the Celtics. The Celtics are the fucking 1 seed, and we're still talking about them for the future.
Yep.
This is a team, and these are teams that have already built the groundwork for teams of the future. And these are teams that can be competing with each other and against each other and not being dominated by just 2 teams, and NBA dominated by 2 teams because of the way that the CBA was just restructured to help teams keep their players. So this is going to be a fun NBA in years to come.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. You got to enjoy the journey, and you got to love watching these young kids grow, because what we just watched in this draft was a ton of young potential stars. And I don't mean any disrespect by this, but last year's draft was a lot of role players, and it's hard to get hyped up about their lack of performance, especially after watching the season and going back like, yeah, no, I can see where I whiffed on a lot of these guys. But this year, sky's the limit. We're talking about one of the deepest drafts in the last 5-10 years. So I'm excited for it. And I think that watching these teams grow, and like you said, it's not just teams with 1 or 2 draft picks. It's like 3 deep on the draft picks on multiple teams. They're building the right way. And I love to see where this is going to go.
And they're building top talent. They're building top 3s through this. So, and the one thing I want to mention, going off the draft, I mean, you look at a guy like Henry Ellison, a guy that barely played for Detroit, a guy last year picked number 18 overall, a guy barely played last year, a guy that was, you were talking about replacing him already with players in this draft who was pretty much not even considered when drafting for fit. And you look at his position now, TJ Leaf, who went 18 overall this year, a guy that has a ton of potential, a guy that looks very scary, and a guy that has a lot of potential, at least to become a possible starter.
If I asked you right now, it's like, who would you take, TJ Leaf or Henry Ellison?
Henry Ellison, easy. I'm sorry. TJ Leaf, easily. Anyways, that's going to wrap up this episode of the Fast Break Podcast. A quick one. We'll be back tomorrow recording more because we got the Kings to talk about. We got the Celtics to talk about.
It's a draft season. You're getting a lot of us.
We got a lot to talk about. So join us tomorrow. We'll hopefully have that up by tomorrow night or Saturday by the latest. So it should be fun to talk about the NBA draft. Tell us your biggest surprises of the NBA draft. Tell us your biggest shocks of the NBA draft. Tell us your bigger fallers of the draft. It was a fun NBA draft for the first round. It's still going on.
It's the longest draft ever.
Dave was so pumped that Jordan Bell was going to the Chicago Bulls, and he was sad to realize that the Warriors actually picked up Jordan Bell, which is a fantastic pickup for them.
Yes, it is. Great pickup, Golden State.
Anyways, let us know your thoughts on the NBA draft. For Dave Oster, I'm Shai Anderson. We'll see you next time.